Saket, what was it that enabled Abi and others to choose path B, to not just go off and do their own thing, but to in fact become advocates and activists, and describe that journey in which you helped each other bring these issues to the attention of Congress ultimately and others in Washington?
Well, you know, Abi related the story of a worker in Mississippi who was on our organizing committee. He was pulled out of bed, he was, you know, they were taking him into a room to lock him up. He ran to the bathroom and ended up slitting his wrists. I got a call 5 minutes after that happened, and was holed up in a very different part of the South, about 6 hours away, and we were on the verge of leading a very different campaign. There were 60 Mexican workers who were about to go on strike. And then I got a call at 4:30 in the morning from these workers saying that this had happened. So we put off that strike and ran over to Mississippi. And I said to the worker on the phone, there was a worker who was asking me what to do and whether we should go on strike. And I said to him, well, you know, I can't tell you what to do. If you go on strike, there's probably a pretty good chance at 4:30 in the morning that you'll all be deported. If you don't go on strike, the 4 people who are locked up in that room will absolutely be deported. And this guy, who apparently has attempted suicide, may not make it. You have to decide. If you decide to strike, though, here are the things you need to do to make it a legitimate strike. And right there and then on the phone at 4:45 in the morning, we created the Signal International Strike Committee. And within 20 minutes of the phone call, there were 300 workers on strike. You know, so I think, and then of course the next question was, okay, we're on strike, now what? And I said, I'll call you back. But, you know, we continued the strike, and that morning, the gates of, Abi used the phrase man camp. Signal International actually had signs saying man camp facility. That's what they call their encampments. The gates opened, workers flooded out, the deportations were stalled, and after that we started the secret organizing process that Abi was talking about. I think that gets back to your question. I think that the need to organize was half necessity. And half just how can you not do the right thing when it becomes so crystal clear in this crucible what the right thing is to do. 1 year later, when Abi led the efforts to escape from the labor camps, we were in New Orleans. We went from Mississippi and Texas to New Orleans, and then thought about next steps. And we decided that the most obvious next step, since the administration, the Bush administration at the time, hasn't listened to the workers, we need to take the story to the Bush administration. Both parties at the time were thinking about the guest worker program as a win-win solution on immigration. We were here organizing real guest workers. And so we decided to walk from New Orleans to Washington to expose the realities of the guest worker program. And it started out as an incredibly idealistic thing to do. And it remained that until we reached Montgomery, Alabama, where we went into the museum that celebrates Emmett Till's life and commemorates his death. And as we were coming out of that museum, we noticed that the entire march was being surveilled from up on top of the Civil Rights Museum. It turned out that the Alabama offices of ICE were conducting surveillance on the march, were surveilling the march all the way up. And it turned into very quickly, clearly a campaign against ICE. We had to really stop the collusion between immigration and the company. And ultimately, we finally exposed that for years and years, ICE had been collaborating with the company to train company officials on how to conduct forced deportations, private deportations, in retaliation to organizing. Ebi and others triggered a Department of Justice investigation, but the same ICE agent who had personally trained company officials had been promoted and was presiding over the investigation of himself. So this is, these are some of the dynamics that pushed the campaign forward.
Abi, I would just like to close your story by hearing about your decision to participate in and help lead essentially a march to Washington, right? Walking to Washington to bring this message, as Saket said, to the administration. Tell us about that journey and how that changed you.
Actually, after we escaped from the main labor camp, we filed a lawsuit against the employer, and we didn't hear from the government or Department of Justice or nothing. And so finally, we decided to do something else. So we all decided to do the march to New Orleans to Washington, D.C. That is the best way we can expose all our stories to the American public and the American departments. That was the real, and also we can make a support from the unions and the communities and the other organizations. So we went all the way to the we same the story we got on the way. We got a video surveillance from the ICE agents, but we didn't stop our march. We went all the way to the Washington D.C. And when we get there, we didn't hear from the government. So we decided if we don't going to go back anyways, we're going to start hunger striking there. We started hunger strike. We did a hunger strike 23 days in there. Finally, Department of Justice contact us, and they said they are ready to having a meeting with us. That was the big victory after we start organizing.
And ultimately, you and others were able to testify before Congress and both tell this story and push for the kinds of policy changes that that you all have been pushing for.
Yeah, that was also a big victory from us as a the guest worker. They called me, the Congress House, for a hearing from me in the Department of subcommittee of Department of Labor. Had a hearing, and they invite me to their hearing, and they asked me what are the things to do. I explained to them from my experience. So I think that was also a good, big victory of our campaign.
One of the things as we close our afternoon here, and for all the best reasons, thanks to our president, we are a little shorter on time than we'd originally planned for. But as we close our conversation today, I hope every one of you has heard these stories. I hope every one of you.
Kids.
What are their names? Benjamin and.
Benjamin got 2-month-old, and Bobby are getting 5-year-old this coming 30.